I never thought I would be the kind of man who questioned whether his wife still wanted him. Yet, there I was, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the cold emptiness between us. Laura was right beside me, wrapped in the covers, her back turned, like always. I could hear the steady rhythm of her breathing, slow and peaceful, as if she were completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. Or maybe she knew. Maybe she just didn't care. It had been months since she had touched me, not just intimately, but at all. No more morning kisses, no more playful touches in the kitchen, no more pulling me close at night. Nothing. At first, I told myself it was stress. She's just tired. She's dealing with a lot at work. It's just a phase. But how long does a phase last before it becomes permanent? Before you stop feeling like a husband and start feeling like a roommate? I turned my head slightly, watching the faint glow of her phone screen from under the covers. She was awake, texting, but not with me. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I had spent too long waiting for things to change, too long pretending not to see what was right in front of me. But now I was done. Done being ignored. Done feeling like I was begging for love. Done waiting. That morning, I made a decision, one that would change everything. One that would leave her shocked forever. Looking back, I should have seen it sooner. The way she avoided my touch, the way she always had an excuse, the way she got annoyed when I tried to be affectionate, as if my presence was an inconvenience. Babe, I'm just really tired. Can we not tonight? You're overthinking things. I had swallowed those words like poison, telling myself she loved me, that it was just a rough patch. But rough patches don't last for 6 months. Rough patches don't make your wife look at you like a stranger. Rough patches don't make you feel like the woman you married is already gone. I had spent too long making excuses for the lack of love, the growing distance, the way she clung to her phone late at night, smiling at messages that weren't from me. But that morning, as I lay there next to her, staring at the woman who once made me feel like the only man in the world, I realized something. I was done being a fool. I slid out of bed carefully, my heart pounding, my thoughts racing. She didn't stir, didn't even notice me moving. I watched her for a moment, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just done. I walked out of the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and opened my laptop. It was time to make some changes. Permanent ones. The kind she wouldn't see coming. The kind that would make her regret ever taking me for granted. I sat in the kitchen, the early morning light filtering through the window, illuminating the cold reality of my situation. I was married to a woman who no longer wanted me. And that wasn't my fault. But staying, that was. So I made a list. Not a list of ways to fix us. I had tried that already. This was a list of everything I needed to do to leave. Heavy checkmark meet with a lawyer. Heavy checkmark move my personal savings into a separate account. Heavy checkmark gather evidence. Because something told me this wasn't just emotional distance. Heavy checkmark find a new place. Heavy checkmark make sure she realized exactly what she lost. Laura had spent months pushing me away. Now, she was about to learn what it felt like when I was gone for real. That morning, before she even woke up, I made 3 moves. 1, I called a divorce lawyer. I wasn't filing yet, but I wanted to know my options. What I found out only made my decision easier. 2, I transferred half of our joint savings into a private account. She had never contributed to our finances the way I had, and I wasn't about to let her screw me over when this ended. 3, I installed a small hidden camera in the living room because I needed the truth. If she was just emotionally checked out, that was one thing. But if she was cheating, I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make sure she felt it. That night, I acted normal. I came home from work, kissed her on the cheek, and asked about her day. She barely looked up from her phone. "It was fine," she muttered, scrolling. No warmth, no effort, no guilt. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a phase. Something was going on, and I was about to find out what. The night I set up the camera, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Laura's slow, steady breathing beside me. deep in sleep, completely unaware that the foundation of our marriage was crumbling beneath her. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that maybe, just maybe, Laura wasn't betraying me. But deep down, I already knew the truth. And in a few hours, I was going to have proof. I woke up early, heart hammering in my chest, and slipped out of bed before Laura even stirred. I went straight to the living room, where the hidden camera had been recording all night. My hands were shaking as I retrieved the footage and plugged it into my laptop. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, and then I hit play. At first, nothing. Just a quiet, empty living room. The occasional flicker of light from outside. And then movement. Laura. She appeared on screen just after midnight, phone in hand, pacing the room, her expression nervous, excited, and then she did something that made my stomach drop. She smiled, a real smile, one I hadn't seen in months. And it wasn't because of me. I fast-forwarded. Minutes passed, then an hour, and then a knock at the door. My blood turned to ice. Laura rushed to open it, glancing around as if to make sure no one could see. And then he walked in, a man I didn't recognize, tall, confident, dressed like he had just come from work, his shirt slightly undone at the collar. He smirked at her, and she practically melted into his arms. I watched, horrified, as my wife kissed him, deep, hungry, desperate. She never kissed me like that anymore. My fists clenched. My entire body trembled. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was something else entirely. Because they weren't awkward. They weren't unsure. This was routine. Which meant this wasn't the first time. Not even close. I watched as they moved to the couch, whispering to each other. I couldn't hear their words, but I didn't need to. Her body language told me everything. The way she touched his arm, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she looked at him like he was the only man in the world, like I never even existed. I skipped forward. I already knew where this was going, and sure enough, minutes later, she led him to our bedroom. Our bed. I slammed the laptop shut, my breathing ragged, nausea churning inside me. This wasn't just infidelity. This was disrespect. This was humiliation. She hadn't even bothered to hide it, because she never thought I would find out. But now she was going to pay. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to set the stage. I was going to let her dig her own grave, and when the moment was right, I was going to bury her in it. Sitting back, I rolled my shoulders, my mind running through every possible scenario. I had the footage. I had the evidence. But I needed something even stronger. I needed to catch her red-handed. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I baited her. Laura had a pattern. She thought she was being clever, but she wasn't. She always texted late at night, always took her showers right before sneaking out to meet him, and most importantly, always waited until she thought I was asleep. That night, I did exactly what she expected. I went about my evening as usual. I kissed her on the cheek like nothing was wrong. I made small talk over dinner, like I wasn't about to ruin her life. And when it was time for bed, I made sure to act just tired enough to be convincing. I climbed under the covers, closed my eyes, and waited. It didn't take long. I heard the sheets shift, felt the bed get lighter as she slowly, carefully slid out. I kept my breathing even and relaxed, feigning sleep. Through barely open eyes, I watched as she tiptoed toward the door, her phone already in her hand. She was texting him. Then, just like clockwork, she grabbed her purse, threw on a jacket, and slipped out the front door. I exhaled slowly, opened my eyes fully. She had taken the bait. She thought I was asleep. She thought she was in control. She had no idea she had just walked into a trap. The moment the door clicked shut, I sprang into action. I was already dressed, already prepared. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and the second phone I had set up to track her location. She had given me access months ago, back when we still trusted each other. She had probably forgotten by now. I slipped out of the apartment just a second behind her, staying far enough back that she wouldn't see me. The parking lot was quiet, the cool night air biting against my skin. I watched as she got into her car, started the engine, and pulled out. I waited. Then I followed, silent, unnoticed, calculated. She thought she was sneaking off to another night of betrayal. She had no idea I was right behind her. I wasn't surprised when she pulled up to a hotel, the same one I had seen in the videos, the one where she and him had spent their stolen nights together. I parked at a distance, watching as she fixed her hair in the mirror, checked her lipstick, and stepped out of the car. I felt nothing. No pain, no rage, just a dark, quiet satisfaction. She thought she was safe. She thought I was at home, asleep, still believing her lies. But tonight, I was going to shatter that illusion. I waited a few minutes before stepping out of my car, pulling my phone from my pocket. I opened our text thread. Me? Hey, babe, can you grab some milk on your way home? I hit send and watched from a distance. I saw her pause outside the hotel entrance, her phone lighting up in her hand. She read my message. Then, after a moment, she replied, Laura, I'm just at Sarah's house for some wine. I'll grab it after. A slow smirk stretched across my face. She was so comfortable lying to me, so used to fooling me, but she had no idea what was coming next. I walked across the parking lot, my footsteps steady, slow, deliberate. Through the glass doors, I saw her standing at the front desk, smiling as she took the key card from the receptionist. She still had no idea I was there. I stepped inside just as she turned, and then our eyes met. For the first time in a long time, I saw something real in her expression. Not love, not affection, but pure raw panic. Her breath hitched, her grip tightening around the key card. Michael, she breathed, her face going pale. I tilted my head, smiling coldly. Oh, don't let me stop you. I gestured toward the elevator. Go ahead. I'll follow. She swallowed hard, glancing around like she was trapped. Because she was. There was no lie she could tell now. No excuse. No escape. Her carefully built house of deception had just collapsed around her, and I was there to watch her burn in the wreckage. The silence stretched thick and heavy as we stood there in the hotel lobby. Me, calm and collected, and her, frozen in place like a deer caught in headlights. I could hear the quiet hum of the hotel, the soft murmur of guests checking in and out, the distant clatter of dishes from the restaurant nearby. But in that moment, the only sound I cared about was her sharp intake of breath, the unmistakable gasp of someone who had just realized their game was over. She clutched the room key in her trembling fingers, her eyes wide with panic. Michael, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I tilted my head slightly, a slow, deliberate smirk curling on my lips. Go on, I said smoothly. Don't let me stop you. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something. An excuse, a lie, anything. But she was at a complete loss. She knew. She knew that no excuse would save her now. And the best part? This was only the beginning. The second I saw her step into this hotel, I knew exactly how I was going to end her. But I needed an audience. Because Laura hadn't just betrayed me. She had made me a fool. And now, it was time for the world to see who the real fool was. So I did something she never expected. I stepped back, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. A few moments later, the doors of the hotel burst open. First came her family, her mother and father, their faces twisted in confusion and concern, followed by her younger sister, who looked between us with widening eyes. Then came my friends, a few of the people she had smiled at, lied to, deceived over the years. And finally, the cherry on top, the wife of the man she was about to meet upstairs. Yes, I had found her, the woman who had been just as blindsided as I had been. And now she was here to witness the truth. I watched as Laura's face drained of all color the moment she saw them. Her mother's gasp, her father's furious expression, the way her sister covered her mouth, horrified. She took a shaky step backward, the room key slipping from her fingers and clattering onto the polished floor. Michael, she croaked, barely able to breathe. What have you done? I let out a low chuckle, crossing my arms. I thought you might need some company. I said casually. After all, this isn't just my humiliation, Laura. This is on you, and now you get to own it. The hotel lobby had fallen into complete silence, except for the distant murmurs of other guests watching from afar. This was the moment The moment when all her lies unraveled in front of everyone. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, raising my voice slightly, drawing everyone's attention. I turned to the hotel receptionist, who had been awkwardly trying to avoid eye contact. "Would you be a dear and play this on the lobby TV?" I asked smoothly. The receptionist blinked, unsure. Before they could respond, Laura lunged for me. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice shrill with desperation. "Michael, please." I stepped away, easily dodging her grasp. "No more lies, Laura." I said, coolly. "It's time for everyone to see who you really are." The receptionist, now realizing what was happening, hesitated only for a moment before plugging in the USB drive. The screen flickered to life. The moment the video started playing, Laura let out a broken sob. There she was, on screen, sneaking out of our bedroom in the middle of the night, unlocking the front door, letting him in. Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Her mother clutched her chest, shaking her head, her father's hands clenched into fists. Her sister looked at her like she was a stranger, and her lover's wife. She had the best reaction of all. She turned to Laura, pure venom in her eyes, and spat out one single word. Laura collapsed to her knees. Tears poured down her face, her hands trembling, her whole body shaking from shame. "Michael," she sobbed. I can explain." "Don't." I cut her off. "You don't get to explain. Not anymore." I turned to Laura's father, locking eyes with a man who had once trusted me with his daughter. "This is the woman you raised." I told him. "This is the woman who stood beside me, took vows with me, promised me loyalty." His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the veins in his temple. "Laura," he finally spoke, his voice low and deadly. She looked up at him, sniffling like a child caught in a lie. "Dad, please." But he just shook his head. "You are no daughter of mine." That was it. That was the moment I knew Laura wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything. Her family, her reputation, her place in the world. And when she looked back at me, her face streaked with tears, her body shaking from humiliation, I leaned down and whispered the final word she would ever hear from me. "Enjoy your new life, Laura." Without another glance, I turned around and walked away. I had moved on, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. Laura was nothing more than a memory now, a scar on the past, a lesson learned. After everything that happened at the hotel, I packed my bags, finalized the paperwork, and filed for divorce immediately. No drawn-out discussions. No reconciliation attempts. I was done. And Laura? She was about to experience what it felt like to truly lose everything. I didn't go looking for updates on her life. I didn't have to. Word traveled fast. It started with her family. Her father, the man who once beamed with pride whenever he spoke of his daughter, cut her off completely. He wasn't just angry. He was disgusted. "You are no daughter of mine," he had told her at the hotel, and he meant every word. He froze her bank accounts, canceled her credit cards, kicked her out of the family home. And worst of all, her mother and sister didn't defend her. They didn't comfort her. They simply let her crumble under the weight of her own choices. Because how could they? She had brought this upon herself, and now she had no one. Then there was her affair partner's wife, the woman who had stormed into the hotel that night. Her rage only rivaled by her humiliation. She wasted no time destroying what little was left of Laura's reputation. She called her job. She called her friends. She made sure everyone in Laura's social circle knew exactly what kind of woman she was. "You want to sleep with someone else's husband?" she had said. "Fine, but don't expect to walk away from this without consequences." And she meant it. By the end of the first week, Laura's entire social life had collapsed. People stopped answering her calls, stopped inviting her out, stopped pretending to be her friends. Because who wants to be associated with a homewrecker? Not even her co-workers wanted to be around her anymore. And when she lost her job, that was just the beginning of her fall. She tried moving in with her affair partner, the same man she had thrown everything away for, the man who had once whispered sweet nothings in her ear while they betrayed their spouses. But guess what? He didn't want her either, Because as soon as his wife filed for divorce, taking half of everything he owned and exposing him in court, he dropped Laura like a bad habit. She wasn't fun anymore. She wasn't exciting. She was a liability. And just like that, she found herself alone. She begged her parents to take her back. They refused. She begged her friends to give her a second chance. They ignored her. And then she was left with one last option. Me. I was sitting in my new apartment, enjoying the peace of a life without Laura, when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. And when I opened it, there she was. Laura, a shell of the woman she used to be. Her hair was a mess, her clothes wrinkled, far from the polished appearance she once prided herself on. Her eyes, red, swollen, tired. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. She tried to force a smile, one of those old manipulative smiles that used to work on me. "Hey, Michael," she said, her voice small. I just stared at her. "What do you want?" She hesitated. I wanted to see you. I wanted to talk." I leaned against the doorframe, folding my arms. "Talk." I repeated. What could we possibly have to talk about? Her lower lip trembled. "I miss you," she whispered. I almost laughed. Miss me? She missed me now? After months of lying, cheating, treating me like a backup plan? Now that no one else wanted her, she suddenly remembered the man who had stood by her through everything? I let the silence stretch between us, watching as she fidgeted under my gaze. "I made a mistake," she continued, her voice shaking. "I wasn't thinking. I took you for granted. But you and we had something real, Michael. We can have it again. I can change. I swear." I tilted my head, studying her. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You threw me away for another man. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You made me feel like I wasn't enough. And now that your life has fallen apart, you think you can come back?" Her lip quivered. "I was stupid," she admitted. "I thought the grass was greener. But it wasn't. I see that now." I chuckled, shaking my head. "You don't miss me, Laura." I said coldly. "You miss the stability, the comfort. You miss having someone who actually cared about you." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Please," she whispered, "just give me a chance." I stepped forward, lowering my voice so she could hear me clearly. "Laura," I said, "you are nothing to me now." She sucked in a sharp breath, visibly recoiling. "You threw away everything we had," I continued, "and now I have something so much better, my dignity, my freedom, my peace. And guess what?" She looked up at me, hope flickering in her teary eyes. "You will never be part of it." And with that, I did the thing I should have done months ago. I closed the door in her face.